I hope this is true for our shipwreck hunter, for in making a discovery, disappointment was his reward. Join me as we descend below the waves and travel back in time for the tale of the Bermingham. We join our tale in the mid-70s. Ian Marshall, an owner of a local dive shop and avid shipwreck diver, began searching for wrecks. He spent a lot of time going through newspapers and the Oakville Library archives looking for information on possible local shipwrecks. One promising lead was the Pinta, a stonehooker built right in Oakville. The Pinta's tale begins in the 1820s. It has been said that Toronto was built on Dundas Shale. A careful look at the foundations of buildings erected before 1910 will often reveal stone foundations. In an age before concrete, a constant supply of building stone was essential. The quarries were far away, and moving large amounts of stone by horse and wagon was not practical, so a new unique Canadian industry was born: shallow water mining for blocks of shale. From the 1830s until after World War I, the Lake Ontario waterfront between the Credit River and Burlington Bay was mined by small, sail-driven ships known as stonehookers. In order to mine Lake Ontario for stone, a new type of vessel was developed. The stonehooker was a small vessel, usually between 20 to 100 tons in burden. They had very little draft. Many drew only 18 inches of water. Schooner rigged, most were square-ended and broad-beamed. The typical stonehooker could sail fast in light wind. William Chisholm was one man who took part in this new marine industry. He purchased 388 hectares of land around 16 Mile Creek and started his merchant shipbuilding enterprise. In total, he built 5 stonehookers. One was named the Pinta after Christopher Columbus's famous ship. For half a century, the Pinta worked the shallow waters of the Oakville area. Then, on November 20th, 1878, she succumbed to age and weather. The sinking was witnessed by people gathering at Oakville Harbour who knew the ship was in trouble. The crew was attempting to reef the sails during a squall when the vessel broached and sank. The rescue boat was transported by road to a point 1 mile east of the harbour. When they launched, only the top masts were visible above water from shore. 2 sailors were rescued from the upper masts. 2 more made it to the yawl boat, but succumbed to the weather. The boat with their bodies came ashore at Port Dalhousie. The last sailor's body was never recovered. Our tale continues in the mid to late 70s. Ian, armed with his research, began searching. Using the rescue launch point as the center of the search area, Ian searched from the St. Lawrence Cement Pier to just east of Oakville from the 30 to 130-foot depth ranges. The searching was done with a small Zodiac inflatable, a basic depth sounder, and line of sight. No electronics were available at a reasonable price at the time. Hundreds of hours were spent searching, but no discovery was made. Our tale continues in September of 1992 with a tragic twist. A small aircraft crashed into Lake Ontario off Oakville. Over a period of several days, several police forces and the Canadian Coast Guard conducted searches for the aircraft and the bodies of the 2 passengers. The plane and passengers were recovered, but something else was discovered and then forgotten. In 2000, Ian ran into a former student who was on the Halton Marine Unit. He was able to obtain a copy of the search chart for the downed aircraft. 2 unrelated sites were marked. As they were too deep for the police divers to dive, a simple drop camera was used to verify that they were not part of the aircraft wreckage. The sites were listed as crane barge at 140 feet and rigging for vessel at 160 feet. When you compare the 2 unidentified sites to Ian's original search area from the 70s, you can see why he was excited. The next chapter of our tale is July 28, 2005. Sean Stoughton from So Scuba provides provided his boat, and he and Ian left Oakville Harbour to check out the numbers. They were joined by a third diver, Jamie Verhagen, and Barry Much came along to mind the boat while they were diving. Considering that GPS was relatively new in 1992, and the US government had a habit of changing its accuracy for military purposes, they were surprised at how accurate the numbers were. They had been prepared to spend most of the day driving in circles. After dropping a couple of markers, they proceeded to dive and found themselves landing on something quite unexpected. It was a full-size mobile tracked crane. While excited at his discovery, Ian was very disappointed that it was not the end to his 30-year search for the Stonehooker PINTA. Here, the tale of the Bermingham starts. The divers found the crane was lying on its side, with boom fully extended, laying on the bottom. About halfway up the boom, they found a small workboat with its back end crushed by the boom. The end of the boom was resting on the upside-down 40-foot tugboat Ubique 3. Off the side of the crane was a small shed on wheels with a towing tongue. Inside the shed they found a picnic table, Evinrude outboard motor, and some personal items such as rubber boots and raincoats. The name Bermingham was found on the tug. Maximum depth of this dive was 137 feet. Ian conducted a couple of reel searches for the barge that these items might have fallen off of, but didn't find anything else. Back on the surface, they started running search patterns with the boat. While doing their search, Ian thought it might be a good idea to contact Bermingham Construction in Hamilton to see what information could be obtained. It turns out that these items were on a large barge, which was being towed from Hamilton to Toronto. The barge had a full-size transport truck container welded to the deck, which served as a workshop and storage area. The barge also had spuds for securing it to the bottom. Aboard the barge was the crane, workboat, small tugboat, and a shed on wheels. During the tow, they encountered rough seas. Off poor credit, one of the crew members looked back, only to see that they were towing an upside-down barge. The cargo was lost somewhere between Bronte and Port Credit. Although they didn't get the exact date, it was about 18 to 20 years ago, mid-1980s. This was great. Thanks to cell phones, not only had they found a new dive site, but had its complete history before returning to shore. After finding out that there was no barge to be found, they proceeded to the second set of coordinates. All they saw on the depth sounder was a sharp spike, but they thought it warranted a dive. It turned out to be a 2x2 foot beam sticking upright 50 feet off the bottom. Maximum depth was 147 feet. This site is less than 1 nautical mile from the first one. This beam is definitely a barge spud. Although they don't know for sure that this spud came off the same barge, it could possibly explain why the barge turtled if it did. If this spud broke loose while under tow in heavy seas, the drag it would cause could possibly be enough to cause the barge to flip. Although the crane site is a little deep for recreational diving, it would prove quite satisfactory for technical training or as a dive site for more advanced divers. Unfortunately, there are no other dive sites nearby. However, it is only about a 10-minute boat ride out of Oakville Harbour and would make for an interesting midweek evening dive for local divers. The Birmingham's tale will continue for many years as divers explore her. As for the Pinta's tale, the end is still not written. She is still out there somewhere, below the waves, waiting to be found.